Be Wise, Advertise. I had another title for this, which I have at the very end. And I just wondered, would anybody, I was told that nobody would understand the first title that I had. If at the end, when I show you the first title that I had, and you don't understand it, my argument really is you shouldn't be in this business. Because no matter how young you are, you should know the history of what we're doing. And that's going to be a bit of a theme that I'm going to make. I got into trouble. I always get into trouble for saying things. I said, I deny saying it, nobody should be allowed to comment on an advertising proposal unless they were over 30. Now, I never really said that. Or if I did, I didn't mean it. Or I was drunk or something like that. However, it was brought home to me last week when I read, there's a philosophy page in the Irish Times. I think it's on a Thursday. And if anybody read it, you will have read that Plato also didn't believe that anybody should be allowed to take a decision unless they were 30. So I'll just leave it there and just say I'm a big fan of Plato. Background. I think, you know, a major objective, I think, of everybody, and I think we can all agree on this one, is that we have to get marketing communications expenditure to be seen as an investment and not as an expense. If we don't do that, we're going to be in trouble forever justifying budgets, because expense is something people try to cut down on, investment is something that's quite good. And the only way it's going to be seen as an investment is if we measure the effectiveness with greater detail, more rigor, and more regular data than we do at present. There's no doubt about it, I would have been as guilty as anyone in trying to, you know, not really want to get involved in the measurement and say, look at our brilliant creativity, we're going to transform your business, and we don't want to get into too many figures because nobody understands them. But those days are over. And it has been shown in a lot of markets that the intermediate measures that I would have been brought up with, like recall and attribute ratings, are just not good enough anymore. They don't really have any correlation with ultimate effectiveness, and ultimate effectiveness is increased profitability for the company. It's amazing how long they've lasted, and it just shows how long, you know, sort of how long people stick with outdated wisdom. And this wasn't wisdom, but the fact that, you know, the more people recall your ad, the better they are. In 1964, a Professor Haskins from America wrote a paper in the Journal of Advertising in which he had 30 case histories summarizing whether recall had anything to do with subsequent sales effectiveness. It had in 2 out of 30 cases. And he came to the conclusion there is no correlation whatsoever between recall of ads and effectiveness. And yet, research companies, and I know there are a few here, have made an awful lot of money over the years of measuring advertising recall. It's nothing to do with effectiveness. Maybe quite handy for your board or for other sorts of people, but don't confuse that with effectiveness. Some of the most effective advertising campaigns have had very low rates of recall. I was involved in 1 or 2, I'm not going to go into them, of campaigns which had incredibly high rates of recall and failed miserably. Guinness Light, to name but one. So market share gain and sales increases is better. You're getting closer now, but ultimately it's profit contribution. Now, it's very difficult to do that, but I think we've got to start making the investment and start getting serious about it. And that means, you know, we're going to have to consider using econometric models and much more advanced statistical techniques than we're using. But obviously the media companies would have much better data in that area. So I think that we're going to see much greater measurement, but it's got to be on profit contribution. Once we can do that, we can then go to a board of directors and make a case for advertising investment, instead of it being seen like extracting teeth or something like that, you know, to get a budget out of people. So unless, and sorry, the final point on that is, you really have to be committed from the very beginning of a campaign. It's too late to try to measure the results at the end, because you need to put the measures in and have benchmark figures in at the very beginning. So that's a key point. So unless we can make that point, we're in trouble. However, you know, we're not involved in the physical sciences. You know, there are limits to what we can measure. We're involved in a very tricky area about human behavior, and it's not always predictable. So we're never going to be able to predict completely the effects of what we do.